Hey there, folks. This is Parker Thune, the co-publisher of OUinsider.com. Let's you and I be honest with one another for a second. Oklahoma's heading into year one in the SEC. You want the best insider coverage of OU football and recruiting that the market has to offer. After all, it just means more now. Well, I've got great news for you. I and the outstanding team at OUinsider.com have that coverage for you, and we're running an outstanding promotional deal this week and this week only that enables you to jump on board at minimal cost. Between August 12th and August 16th, you can use promo code SEC24, that's all caps SEC24, to take 75% off your purchase of an OUinsider.com subscription. That means you'll get full access for an entire year for less than $3 a month. I hope to see you over on the message board shortly, folks. We'll make it worth your while. Become an insider today at OUinsider.com.
What is going on, Sooner Nation? Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Barry and Mack Show. As always, myself, Barry, personal trainer, sports performance coach out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And alongside me, former Sooner wide receiver, 2000 national champ, Mr. Damian Mackey. How are we doing today, D-Mac?
Burning the midnight oil, B. Burning the midnight oil. Let's get it in. Getting closer to game week. Obviously, dealing with camp, you got to talk about what's going on and what's moving and shaking around as the young lads get ready for the 24th season in the SEC. And I've just been traveling a ton, man. I think I've been in 4 states the last 5 days. So, and I got to fly to Cali in the morning. So busy times,
Fun.
but I got to get my schedule cleared away because football season starts. I need to be front and center.
That's right, man. I will definitely be at the OU Houston game, so that'll be fun. But D-Mac, off the field news. Well, I guess technically off the field, on the field, right? It's off the field right now. It will eventually be on the field. And that news is the new Sooner uniform drops. The old heads are going to be extremely happy. And I'll tell you what, man, the youth have seemed to liked it as well. The Sooners dropped a brand new, but not new jersey. And I'll tell you what does it for me, D-Mac. So for those of you who don't know, OU went back old school, kind of that circa 2003. They also revitalized it in like 2010, 2011 when Landry was there, but that was against Texas Tech. They caught the L. We don't want to relive those memories. However, they look good, but man, the cream white helmets and the SEC patch with that just pure, just like buttercream white, man, that just, it sets off the entire thing. It's got the stripe down the pant. So the pant don't look a ton different from what they roll out with on a normal basis. Some of the details are missing. It's been a little more streamlined, but the jersey itself with the stripe on the shoulder, the classic sort of block number look, everything looks really solid. Your first reaction as a former player, you remember the 2003 look when OU was dominant, rolling it out there with your Tommy Harrises and your Teddys and J-Dubs. That's who was rocking those jerseys. And this is paying a little homage to that, but really going back to your 50s, early 60s with the Wilkinson era. Talk a little bit about what you think of the jerseys, and is it a look that OU sticks with? Rumors are there's no more wood grain, right? Maybe you can confirm or deny this. Give us the lowdown, D-Mac.
Yeah, first things first, I love the throwback. Rumor is we will be using some rendition of one of our yesteryear uniforms in the years to come. So obviously they're wearing this one against Houston, but the game you'll be at. Looks good. It's a little more cherry red. I guess I would call it Sooner red. Back when when they redid it in 03, I don't even know if there was a Sooner red jersey. It was just kind of like OUs and Bamas and Indianas. There was like 5 schools who basically had the same reddish looking jersey back then. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now every school has their own distinct color. OU has Sooner red. That's our actual color. So you can see it's a little more cherry than the 03 version. I love the gray mask. To me, that's just so
Oh yeah,
that's so retro. You know what I'm saying? Like that's so retro. Back
yeah.
in the day when face masks were only black or gray. Like that's, by the way, you know that's
Or
why.
non-existent.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, like back in the
Yeah,
day, the reason
yeah.
teams had gray masks was because there were two color options, or maybe
That was
three. There
it.
was white, there was black, and there was gray. So if you didn't have white or
Ah, that's
black, you had
interesting.
a gray mask, right? Yeah, that's why we wore gray. So
Oh
I
man.
like the gray mask. It looks good. It's retro.
Okay.
I think the game pants are the same. Actually, I think they're actually just
Is that what?
wearing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the game pants are the exact same game pants, just like '03. In 2010, by the way, the sickest one was the away jersey we wore at Tech. Landry Jones just got us the L, so I can't support those jerseys. Those jerseys were nice. Oh, I like the all white. Um, but looking forward to it. Yes, got confirmation that you can expect one of these every year. So every year we're gonna have some type of showing love and support to yesteryear uniforms. I'm looking forward to seeing some of the other ones. Apparently, there might be some of the older ones with the cream in the jersey, like the actual like tan,
Ooh.
like the khaki. So it'll be pretty cool to see if we roll one of those out sometime in the
Okay.
near future. I just want to win in the jerseys. I want the kids to be excited about the jerseys. I want the recruits to be excited about the jerseys. I think OU does a phenomenal job with all of the social media and exposing and engaging and really creating an environment of excitement around the uniforms. It's a big deal. It was a big deal. Listen, I don't think I ever said this on a pod. Roy and I go to UCLA. We don't go to OU if UCLA is Nike. UCLA was Reebok, and they had these ugly ass cleats that I was just like, I can't even. They had a guy named Skip Hicks. They had a guy. Skip
Oh
Hicks was
man.
a stud. They had Freddie Mitchell. They had some guys,
Freddie
right?
Mitchell
And
was a
and they were
dog.
and they
Yeah.
were really good. They wore Reebok, and I was like, really,
Man.
I ain't going to no school that wears Reebok. And he was like, yeah, I ain't either. And so UCLA, by the way, UCLA recruited both of us hard, hard, hard. They invited us to UCLA versus Tennessee when Peyton Manning was the Heisman contender. It was it's a big thing. Uniforms matter. The players care. The recruits are watching to see, right, how much of an impact the university has with them. I think to eloquently retire the Rough Riders. The Rough Riders have no um championship pedigree. I think we won a couple Big 12
Mm.
championships in them, which I don't want to take anything away from that. I think Texas, the year we beat Texas, I think
Yep.
we may have
The
wore,
Kyler Murray
right.
and yeah,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
pass to
yeah.
Calcaterra. Yep.
The one-handed catch. So you know what I'm saying? I don't want to discredit them, but damn, we have some shitty defenses in those uniforms. Like I vividly
Yeah.
remember us being just toilet paper, for a lot of
Yeah.
those years. So looking forward to seeing us play just at a higher echelon. I think year three. By the way, you watch. They're either going to come out flat because they're going to be too juiced, or they're going to beat the brakes off of Houston because they're excited. Those uniforms are going to have an impact. You watch. Looks
So,
good to
so
me.
do you my follow-up would be this then. Do you think that transitioning out of the Big 12 where we got it the uniforms in the Big 12 had a certain look to them, right? Your Baylor, your Okie State, your Kansas State. I always thought K-State had a nice clean
KU
look,
KU switched their
but
uniforms a
KU
million
switched them
times.
up. It got very arena
Tech switched their
football-ish.
Tech switched their
Yeah.
uniforms. West V switched their uniforms a billion times.
Yeah, and it felt like OU was kind of staying in line with that. And I think that's why some of the older fans, some of those fans who do maybe remember these 50s teams, right? The early Switzer teams. Uh just the do you think the move to the SEC maybe influenced what the thoughts and ideas were in rolling these out? Do you think
I
that was
do.
a factor?
I do. I think SEC is all about tradition. SEC is all about history. SEC is all about, I mean, just until 10 years ago, they were 3 yards in a cloud of dust running power football, pull the guard, pull the guard, pull the guard. And then we're going to go over the top once, right? Like Les Miles days, right? Les Miles
Yeah.
days, they was smash mouth football. Yeah, I think OU knows it's off brand, especially for a blue blood, especially for a big bro, like a true blue blood to have some helter skelter. Let's do some weirdo thing, uniform. It'll be interesting to see if we wear the anthracites. I don't know if that's still in the works.
It
Um,
seems
and
it is because the recruits still wear them in their visit
yeah,
photos. But
Yeah,
man, they look so bad on TV to me.
I
They
think they
look
would look.
so bad.
I think they'd look phenomenal on an away uniform.
Agreed.
The crimson numbers on a white uniform with the
Yeah.
outline, I think that would look really good.
That's really the
Uh,
biggest problem is the number color
yeah,
on the home.
it's the gray on the red, or the red
Yeah.
on the gray jersey for sure. It's hard to see
Yeah.
it on TV. By the
It
way,
needed to be white.
it needed to be white.
Yeah. Yeah. Like haven't seen them in person. I imagine they do look different when you get up
They
close.
do. They look really good, but on TV it looks bad. Even in the game, it's kind of hard to see it. Even when you're at the game, it's hard to see the numbers. You're kind of like trying to figure it out. But it looks really good up close. It really does.
Interesting. Well, one of the players who actually had a pretty solid game, if I remember right, in the anthracite jersey, won't be rolling out there day one. And according to all reports, may more than likely miss the season, D-Mac. And this was a man, we got to bring back Gorilla Nuts this upcoming year.
Oh,
This
for sure.
man was 2, 3, 4-time Gorilla Nut player of the game. And that is Jaden Gibson, a guy who, I've had good thoughts about him. You've talked very highly of him now going on the year 3 for him. He's a player who was really poised to have a breakout year. You talked about a guy who could, play X or Z a little bit, like he can mix it up. A player who stretches the field and gives OU a jump ball threat like we have not seen in a very long time. He came in with Levy in that very first recruiting class, was really a prize guy. I want to say at the time he was committed to Florida.
He was.
So OU, I believe he was like a Nick Evers package, if I remember right.
He
Was
was.
he?
Hmm.
That's right. Him and Nick came. But he is a player who was poised for a breakout year. Anytime you start hearing out for the season, lower body injury, it always makes you think ACL, right? It makes you think full tear. Got to have surgery. Got to go through the rehab, which has been shortened these days. Like the OU has had players now make comebacks and be a little closer to ready at like month 7, 8, 9 versus that full year. Back when you played, it was a year, and you just like you might have started your back return to play, but before then, obviously, but before a guy ever saw the field, that no guy ever toured in fall camp and was playing by any time later that next season. It just didn't happen. Now you're seeing it happen much more often. I think Adrian Peterson was the first guy to set the tone when it came to that. And he was just a freak of nature. But more guys doing it now that the procedure has been improved upon. It's been streamlined. It's a slightly less invasive. Like everything about it is better. Everything about medical science and sports performance is better. But just from a player perspective, right? A guy who played the game, played receiver, dealt with injury, and you're a guy in Jaden Gibson who is, a part of that 1A, 1B lineup that OU was going to roll out there. How do you think this affects his mental? How do you think this affects the team, that position group?
Um, I came to OU on a torn ACL. It took me 18 months. I tore ACL, MCL, PCL. So mine was a full reconstruction. Um, it's very disappointing because Jaden had earned the right to be a dude. And I really believe he was going to battle to be a starter, or at least a possession to possession starter. He was going to be in that top 5 group. It's interesting. I guess speaking to him, get to work. And by the way, I don't know if it's like confirmed that that's the case, but we're speculating here, right? We're saying, hey, I think this is, what the tea leaves are saying and such. And so I don't know if it's an ACL or even patellar. Could be, it could be a patellar that
Hopefully
he did.
not that. Those are rough too.
But it sucks. The thing that makes this a little bit better is the fact that our best receiver last year, which this is going to kind of like be the flip side of the coin of what we discussed when we discussed the receiver groups, was Andrew Anthony was a guy who said, hey guys, hold my beer, because the first 3 weeks of the season, watch the film, I was the one, right? First 3-4 weeks of the season, right? The QB just missed me when I had beat my man by 2 yards multiple times. And so he is coming back. He is healthy. He is a plus receiver. He is a guy, but I think he's an X. Just in his body type, and he's a methodical. He's like Anderson. Anderson's methodical, which is good. And by the way,
Cerebral. Yeah.
he's really good in short area, but you've got to know how to move and read defenses on the fly to play Z. It's just a little different. There's a natural fluidity to it. Whereas X, you just got to beat your man, get on the right shoulder, you know, block him out to the right direction. Either if I'm running an in cut route, I got to keep him on my outside. If I'm running an outside cut, I got to stack him right. Z is not the same thing. You've got a whole defender, you got a corner, you got the free safety, you got a backer who's buzzing to your area, and then you got a tight end who you can combo with a lot more. There's a lot more happening. Um, I think there's time. I mean, Anthony's obviously a guy who's savvy enough to, if he needed to, he could. But I think this impacts Farouk. I really do. I think this
Oh,
puts Farouk
interesting.
back in a position. Yeah, I think Farouk is. I mean, it's good to have that depth, right? When you see a lot. By the way, I was reading the comments, and when you see a lot of people advocating for Farouk, other people saying he's just not as good as that other crew. You still like to have a Farouk in tow because Farouk is a qualified. He's a veteran. He's made big plays. He's a strong. I mean, there isn't any area where he's weak. He just lacks the size of some of
Yeah.
his counterparts, and then the speed.
Yeah.
You got bigger guys that are faster than you, right? Teams are gonna put them ahead of you. But this is an opportunity for Rook to come in and make a place because Farouk can play Z for sure. That so we still have some continuity there. And like I said, I don't know if Anthony's gonna beat out Anderson at X. I think Anderson's got X locked down. So I think that gives an opportunity for Andrew to move and be a guy who can be versatile in a bunch of different arenas. And so from a numbers point, Barry, I think by committee, we're able to subsidize what production Gibson was going to bring. What you can't subsidize is go back and watch some key third downs. By the way, from the beginning of the season to the end of the season, go back and watch some key
Mm,
possessions. Gibson's just one of those guys where he's an emotional player and he can come up with emotional, create emotional opportunities for himself. And so we'll see if some of those other guys can replace that aspect of his game, because that I would like, again, I think he had the highest ceiling. We don't know what Burks can do on Saturdays. Burks may be that kind of guy as well, but Gibson did it last year. And
yeah.
so here's one last thing I'll say. If there's a silver lining, it's the fact that his injury, Anderson could potentially have 1,000-yard year and think he's ready for the NFL. Anthony's a guy coming off an injury, 3, 4, 5 years in playing college ball. He's going to be ready to go, right? Burks has a big year, right? He's a
He's
3, 4+
gone.
year guy, right? Guy's going to the NFL, right? Gibson coming off an injury provides a transitional year where we have a guy, and it probably puts him in a position where like he gets to be in the position that he wants to be in, because I think Anderson's a guy. His brothers had a ton of injuries, and you know what I mean. Like family wise, they're like, hey, if the opportunity presents and you're around 1, 2, or 3 guy, go. Right. I think Burks is a guy. He anticipates putting up the production. Go. Anthony's a guy. He's a 3rd, 4th, 5th-year guy. He's gonna go. So we could potentially be losing 3 receivers. We've recruited the position well, but Gibson having that transition year to get himself healthy gives us another bona fide. And we're talking 6'4", 4'4" guy he's still played in big games and been a big presence. And JFA will not be ready to go to the league yet. So he'll have a veteran
Mhm.
quarterback coming back with a veteran, receiver coming. By the way, Farouk, I think Farouk's been here forever. So I'm pretty sure Farouk's going to be
Man.
trying to test his luck in the NFL as well.
Yeah, and it tells you too, we didn't really talk about this a ton. I mean, we covered all the guys, but really it really wasn't a thing to discuss until this injury, but it just tells you how well that position has been recruited.
Oh yeah.
That Farouk goes from being your best, one of your top receivers
He was
to
the best
very
Z.
quickly. He
Mhm.
was, yeah, to very quickly just being a part of the rotation, which to be going into the SEC, that's what you wanted. If Farouk is your best player, you're probably going 6-6, 8-4, 9-3 at receiver, and that's just, unfortunately, that's the
There you
way it
go
goes.
again. There you go again. If D-Mac's your best player, you're probably going.
That's hilarious, man.
D-Mac's your best player. You win the natty, baby. That's what you're
Man,
doing.
hey, I mean, technically, you put up the best numbers against FSU. So,
That was a committee, man. We all made it happen. I just
beautiful,
laugh.
beautiful
You're
stuff.
hilarious. You're
Well, we'll
hilarious.
have to circle back on the OU Insider. We'll have to circle back to that. And before we get into the running back discussion, again, just want to remind everybody, show's brought to you by OU Insider, OUinsider.com. Go grab yourself a membership, doing awesome stuff over there. But D-Mac, tonight, talking about the running back group. This is a position that it's taken a while for OU to build some depth in that room, right? You had some guys leave to the portal. Maybe a couple guys who were unexpected. One guy for sure unexpected. I think the writing was on the wall to some degree, but he played so well and got so many snaps that you thought, does he hang around? He was such a valuable piece. But we're going to go through the names right here. And this isn't in any particular order, right? So don't kill us. Don't let this be another Jacob Sexton at guard situation, y'all. So no particular order, but we do happen to start with a guy you've been very high on. Caleb Hicks, going to be a part of the fold. Saw him in the spring game, looked as good as ever. I think just a solid player. And we'll go into the nuts and bolts of all these guys. We won't do it just now.
Yep.
Javonte Barnes, he's still around. Didn't portal out. I know there was some thought amongst the fan base with what OU's brought in. Does a guy like Javonte Barnes, who saw his role get reduced, does he portal out? Taylor Tatum, incoming freshman, a guy who I will go into that. Sam Franklin, who showed out in the spring game, played really well. Again, 5'10", 190. And I will say, OU in the running back room, a lot of guys with similar body types. This is probably the most similar of look that I think OU has had in terms of just body types and what they're rolling out there, right? You got Tatum, 5'10", 205, little on the heavier side. Barnes, probably one of your longer guys, but Hicks, 5'11", 213. You got Franklin, 5'10", 200. Xavier Robinson, he's going to be a big body out there, 6 foot, 222. That weight, that he lost some weight. I'll just tell you guys. Xavier Robinson no longer has eaten Xavier Robinson. Then Chapman McCown, just known for the social media highlights, man. He is all over the socials all the time. Rocking 22, just such a good looking number for a running back. So Chapman McCown, Emeka Megwa, who is still at OU. And then, of course, paying respects to some of the other guys, Andy Bass, an Oklahoma City guy. Very talented player in high school. I thought was a nice little pickup. And then you got Gavin and Gabe Sawchuk, the two Sawchucks. Gavin, of course, the guy who everybody expects this season, D-Mac, and maybe that's where we'll start with this discussion. Gavin has been really feast or famine his whole career so far at Oklahoma, right? He's either been on the injury, on the training table, or he's been a guy, taking it 80 against Oklahoma State. What do you expect from him this year? Like right now, we talked a little bit pre-show. OU really doesn't have a guy in that room who feels like they're NFL ready tomorrow. And that's just being real with the whole situation. And, Caleb Hicks from the spring game probably looked the most ready to go, like he could play on an NFL roster. But you got to get the snaps. You have to get the time on the field. You have to put the film out there. So with Gavin Sawchuk and what he's done up to this point, I guess my first question would be, how would you grade him thus far? And what do you expect from him this year in a slight change of scheme, change of perspective with how you're going to attack in the run game, and possibly a change in role, right? Is it more committee based? Do they still try to feature him? What do they want to do? Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm a Gavin guy. He impressed me in the Florida State game 2 years ago. It pissed me off that they called that hold on Bird, I believe. If Bird doesn't get that hold, he splits him. We run some type of trap action right up on the backer, and he's right behind the backer and busts his head on the goalpost, and then there's some hold. But he showed explosion, he showed good vision, and that was a year where we really struggled to have explosive plays in the run game. And he wasn't available the first half of the season, if I remember correctly, or wasn't getting a ton of snaps. Um, Last year, I know he had some leg injuries, and he just looked like he lacked the top end explosion. I remember when we first started the pod, and he was coming in as a recruit, top top recruit out of Colorado. How explosive he was. How if he got a
Mm-hmm.
step, he was leaving everybody.
Separates. Yeah.
Yeah, and so hopefully having a year being healthy has put him back in a position to have his explosion or breakaway speed, because he does have a knack for finding daylight. It was just interesting to see many times last year where he'd go and get 30 yards where you thought he might have been able to take it to the house. And so Gavin's a guy, I think, if we were doing NCAA football, he'd probably be an 87 overall. You know what I mean? Like you said, I don't think he's a
Yeah.
guy who's a surefire NFL dude. The beauty is he's stepping up conference um toughness, and if he can, I think if he produces even at the level he produced last year, he will earn a lot more respect because of the defenses and teams he's going to be playing against. When you go against a
Good point.
Tennessee and an Ole Miss and a Bama and a Mizzou, again, I can't put Mizzou up there. One fluke year and everybody's talking about Mizzou. Mizzou can kiss. Yeah. Yeah, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
Mizzou, I mean, but hey, I like it. I was listening to Joe Klatt, and they were like, "Oh man, if they can win these games," I'm like, two or three of the teams they named are also rans. You know what I'm saying? So just because they
Yeah.
got that SEC patch, we got one too now. Like we got an SEC patch.
Hey
So
now.
you know what I'm saying? You got to come see us with our SEC patch. It just means more. Like it just means more Norman now too. No, but in all seriousness, um, Gavin's gonna be, I think, and just my own thoughts, is probably the first opportunity as the lead dog in a running back by committee backfield. I'm looking forward to seeing my favorite and my pick, Caleb Hicks. I think the kid is built for the SEC. He's a guy who, especially if he doesn't have to carry the ball 25, 30 times, but if he can have
Yeah.
13, 14 carries and have, 4 to 6 in the first half, and then be the guy late third quarter when third and threes and you need to put a little lean on some people. He's a guy who's going to finish runs and get you first. And he's going to be a guy who's going to run through traffic and turn a 7-yard gain into a 27-yard gain, potentially into a touchdown.
Yeah.
Um, Looking forward to him. Uh, I don't know. I think Barnes is he's gonna get a shot, which I'm excited to see what he does with it. But he's not going to have a long leash. I think he's a guy who has shown, man, and he has so much promise as a true freshman. He looked good. I think he had a little ball security issues, if I remember, a couple fumbles,
He
and
did.
yeah,
Yeah.
but he's a guy who just hasn't improved. The room has improved. He will have an opportunity to prove himself this year because the kid who came in, what's his name? Sam? What's his name? Franklin or
Oh,
something like
Sam
that?
Franklin, and then
He
of
ain't
course Taylor
bad.
Tatum. Yeah.
Well, yeah, he ain't bad. He's a guy.
Yeah.
What's the guy's name who just went to Wisconsin? What's his name?
Oh, Tawi Walker.
And he was a guy who we would see get 1 or 2 carries. Like that guy ain't bad. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden he had to step up and play. And he was a guy. That's the kind of guy I see
Yeah.
in Franklin. Not the same body type. Definitely not the same type of running back. But Franklin has a knack. He finds creases. He has that ability to get in and out and squirt out of a hole. And listen, man, that's a kid. If OU has shown a propensity to say, hey man, if you can ball, even if you're a walk-on dude, we'll give you an opportunity. And so I'm looking forward to him. But then again, it's what I said about D line. It's what I said about the DN position as well. Taylor Tatum's going to get an opportunity. There just is not a lead dog in the kennel. There isn't one. And because you have the number one running back prospect in all of America coming into town, um, don't be surprised if against Temple, the game gets out of hand and they start handing him the ball so he can go out and get 100, 200 yards. You know what it reminds me of? Ronaldo. 2001 season, or maybe it's the 2002 season, but
Mhm.
it's Q's senior year, and Q's, made a name for himself, but all of a sudden Ronaldo's getting all these carries early in the season,
Yeah.
and it's because they're trying to build his confidence and get the next guy up and ready to go. Tatum seems like, or tell me his first name again. how do I say
Taylor
it?
Tatum.
Yeah,
Taylor
you know, how
Tatum.
people be on me in the comments like, Mackie, you said the
Oh.
name wrong. Man, listen, dog, don't come for me about no damn names.
Hey, man.
Uh, I think
That's great.
I was saying Jared instead of Jaden, and oh man, they
Oh
was
my
coming for me.
God.
No, but
That's hilarious.
Tatum's the kind of guy who the coaches want to know if they have an actual alpha. And generally, running
Hmm.
back's a position where your freshman year, you know, your natural ability and talent can take over. Um, Word on the street is he understands blocking. Word on the street is he's a guy who can catch the football out of the backfield. And so obviously he's got some sore hammies or something. He's got little leg stuff. Guys, by the way, let me just say this tangent. Guys, everybody has leg stuff the first 2 weeks of camp. You run so
Facts.
much. Every single camp, all of us pulled our hamstring every camp. Me, Fagan, Twan, Dre, Norman. Norman always had back. Like you old man, his back was always messed up. It's because you're putting
Yeah.
so much pressure and weight you're running the first 6 days. It's just constant. They'll tailor back the second half, and I promise you, they know what they're doing. Um, Guys with sore hammies and stuff like that, it's 100 degrees that you stretch for an hour. You're in there twice a day, right? Like these guys are getting the help they need. It's just wear and tear. It's going to prepare them to have a 13-week season. And so when you hear about those pulls and some of those owies, right? Generally, if a guy is going to be sitting next week, that's problematic. This week,
Hmm.
it's generally not that bad, that bad a deal. In fact, I think next week might be game prep week. So this week right here is where you expect to see guys coming back and getting reps. So the rest of the crew, you know, baby saw Chuck and little buddy McCown. He was cute in the
Yeah.
spring game. He got some run. He's a guy. He's a guy. We're gonna be beating somebody by half 100, and the crowd's gonna go crazy because he's gonna jog on the field with his 22, and he might score a touchdown, right? And
Yeah.
so you'd like to have. We have really good depth. We just need one alpha, and Sawchuck's gonna get a
Facts.
chance to be the alpha in the. He's gonna already be the 1A. I think Barnes is going to get a healthy option, but Barnes's snaps, if he doesn't look dynamite, are going to immediately start to get taken by Tatum. You watch, because similar guy, a taller guy, but more natural, more forward lean, right? And again,
Yeah.
#1 running back in America, you got to give that kid a chance. You're just not going to bench him if he's healthy. They're going to give him a chance to run the rock. So right now, Barry, they're probably my bottom 4 position groups. I just feel really good about a lot of our position groups.
Yeah.
And it's not a knock on the running back position. You just don't have that experienced high end dude who can go score a 50-yard touchdown, go pick up a 3rd and 6, and knock a blitzing, weak side backer on their ass in the B gap when they're trying to blitz us. We don't have that guy right now. One of these guys are going to have the opportunity to show that they are.
I think you're probably right. And that's because, at the DB position, OU is loaded. They bring a lot of guys. Linebacker, same deal, right? Feels like one of the better groups that they've had in a long time, not just on this team, but in a long time, the most depth at backer. You feel great about the receiver group, right? The offensive line, there's got to be some stuff figured out there. But even to me, them and running back, that's the relationship, right? Can they can both of those groups elevate this season and not be a situation where, like last year, there was a lot of times where the offensive line did their job. We talked about it in some of the film stuff. The holes were there. The run game was getting criticized heavily. The gaps, the creases were there. You just had guys like Barnes and Major. They were just missing the hole. They weren't timing it well. The chemistry was off. The timing was off with everything.
Eyes
Circling
were
back to
closed. Eyes
the
were
eyes were
closed.
close. So, well, actually, you know what? That reminds me of. I'd totally forgotten about that. I talked about that with Barnes and Major. Both of those guys go. They get the ball and that head immediately drops, and you cannot do that playing running back because you're going to end up just diving into the hole, right? You're never going to make a guy miss. You've got the best running backs and probably the best I've ever seen, and we're talking like elite in terms of the lean with still having his head and eyes up, is Derrick Henry. I've never seen a guy run. He's tall when he gets out into the open field. He's a great sprinter, but But man, when he hits the hole, he had such a natural lean, and it's like he's leaning, but that posture is still there. He's still looking and seeing what's going on. To me, Sawchuk had so many lower body things going on a year ago that we heard about. Anytime you're dealing with a hamstring injury, your ability to accelerate is going to be very minimized. You're not going to have the ability to create separation from you and the closest defender. You're not going to have the ability to evade. And what I think we saw as the year went on was he got more conditioned, right? Hamstrings are either one or two things. The first thing is what you talked about, which is the most common. They're just not conditioned for the work yet. You have to take time and a lot of running, a lot of agility work, a lot of just doing the volume on the legs, getting those lower extremities up to snuff, because they're just not ready, right? You've been off for a little bit. You've been focusing on getting bigger, getting stronger. There's been running, but in fall camp, when you're kind of changing the style of the way you're training, you have to rely a little bit more on sprinting to stay explosive, because you're not necessarily always lifting with the same intensity. You're a little bit more into you're getting game ready right now. Yep. You've topped out you've tuned up the engine enough. You're now into, let's be ready to do the mental stuff, to do the football stuff on the field. You've transitioned out of the strength and conditioning. It's still a factor, but it's not the most important thing. Now it's time to play football. I think Barnes is going to really struggle to find a spot in this lineup, just because of, one, he does not have the natural things that a Tatum does, the natural things that a Tawi did a year ago, right? The natural things that a Sawchuk does. And I think Tatum probably does these things even better. He's a little, in my opinion, a little closer to what Tawi does. And we're talking about simple things like having comfort in the position to not be worrying about the first guy, right? So often Barnes was never able to elude the first defender. So he either got tripped up or he wasn't ready for the second defender, which is where elite running backs make their hay, right? Elite running backs, your vision really isn't on the first guy. You're going to beat that defensive end, even if he's got an angle on you. If you're a fast enough guy, explosive enough guy, and you got enough space, you're going to beat him. He's not really a concern. Your concern is that backer. Your concern is that DB coming up to fill. Can you make him miss? If you make him miss, now you're off to the races. Guys like Sawchuk can do that. Guys like Taylor Tatum, I believe, are players that can do that. And Franklin showed a little bit of that. There were plays a year ago where I looked at Tawi, and he just did such a good job at setting things up for himself. There was a play against Cincinnati where he did, it was very subtle in the actual maneuver, but all he did was use his eyes. He just gave a quick little glance one way, got the defender to shift just enough to sell it, and then went the other direction. And those are the subtleties of the position that, of course, are coached up, right? Go into the whole eyes facing, shoulders facing this way, and then we're going to cut it back, right? You got to sell some of those moves, and you got to sell them well. And I don't feel that Barnes did that. I will also say the foot injury, which is what I believe he had. I think he had a foot thing that has really hampered him. Once you have a foot injury of really any kind, but especially if you're a guy who relies heavily on explosiveness, you've got to be able to have some burst. Man, it's not only just about the injury itself, but the mental side. You lose confidence. It never quite heals the same, right? I never thought that Hollywood was the same after he had his injury right before the Alabama game. Even when he got to the NFL, I never thought he had the same initial burst that he had when he was playing at Oklahoma. I felt like he lost just a little bit. And that's just because your foot, man, when you give it so much time off and it's been used to so much activity and it's gotten conditioned to be this high performing part of your body, and now you take that away, I think it's going to mean I think it's going to mean some long-term work for Barnes to get back to being a guy, and I just don't know if he'll be that guy at Oklahoma. So to me, and I haven't even talked about Hicks, I thought of all the guys, probably the best close area explosion and the best pop with the pads when he makes contact with a guy. You know, you don't want to meet him at the hole in the line of scrimmage. He's a guy who's going to be that, you know, it's kind of calling back to Trey Sermon a little bit. You hope he can be a player like that who can come in against a big dog like Ohio State. He sealed the Ohio State game, right? In my opinion, he was one of the most important players
For sure.
to help finish that game on that roster. Um, what would you say from if you were going to grade how those guys did a year ago and how DeMarco Murray has done as a coach, technically recruiter, right? And I know you got a lot of friends on staff, you know, a lot of these guys. So obviously this is always kind of one of those things where it's like, D-Mac, you great, you know, but if you were going to be honest and say, what has been your assessment of these position groups thus far? And I think maybe the better way to phrase it is, do you feel he's improved as a coach? Do you feel that the positions themselves have improved? But give us your honest take. What do you think about where the coaching has been since Cale Gundy has not been the coach? Gundy had a great run at running back. Then OU had some misses on some guys, um, and just never quite kind of found the zest at that position that you needed to find. But Murray's there. He's been recruiting at a high clip. How would you grade his performance thus far?
Um, Here's what I'll say. I think he has been conservative in his willingness to play the new dynamic freshmen. Sawchuk comes to mind. By the way, Barnes comes to mind, right? He was really slow to let those guys get a chance to get their feet wet, and running back has long been, um, I guess, proven that it's a position you can put a pup in and just let
Yeah,
natural instincts take over. Um, and so I think one thing that I would say he probably is just, course correcting in his own, in his own right is, how he deploys the backs. There were just, I can just think of times the last 2 seasons where you see a back who is struggling and yet they're still rotating in heavily. Like, you know, Barnes tripped over his foot two possessions in a row, or put his head down and ran right into the pack. He could literally just L2'd or just bounced out the hole and found daylight like Tyree did, running a 4.61 versus Barnes, who's probably a 4.4 or 4.5, whatever, sub 4.5 guy. He just didn't do it. And so I think there's pressure, you're and Murray's been around long enough. He's not a noob, and he's an NFL dude. Like literally, he's got skins at the NFL level. He was one of the very best running. I think he was the best running back in the league even one season.
yeah,
And obviously he's an OU great. I don't know if he still holds the touchdown record, but the guy scored a damn ton of touchdowns. I just know he wants to continue to improve. I also know that as long as you're continuing to recruit the best players are just going to play better than other players. So, we get Taylor Tatum's and the rest of these guys continuing to come, Caleb Hicks continuing to come. It's going to make him look good. So if, a grade, I don't know. I don't think he would grade himself an A. If he's a tough grade, I don't think he would probably give himself a B minus, maybe even a C plus if he was a tough grade on himself, because he has to give himself room to grow and improve and get the right guys in the mix to win. And it's difficult when you don't have a dude. If you got an Adrian Peterson or a DeMarco Murray or a P Ryan or a Mixon, it's pretty easy to say, hey dude, go tote the rock. But when you like, does Sawchuk have it today, or does Tawi have it today? Right? Barnes is the guy who was showing last year he had the most promise, so we got to try to give him a chance. But this version of him is not the him we saw last season. I'm speaking to last season versus the season prior to that, where Barnes did
yeah,
look pretty good. So when you're in that scenario, you wish you had a Taylor Tatum who you can say, man, I just want a 5-star who I can put in there and know he's going to be able to get the job done. I think that's part of it too. And him being able to get into the echelon of he got the number one running back in America last recruiting cycle. He's doing something right. So, this season, like I said, I think the room's an 87. You get the number one running back in America. He can flash. You get a guy like Hicks who is versatile and physical. He could flash. And then of course you got the vets, Sawchuk and Barnes. I think Sawchuk's going to get a lot of opportunities. I think Barnes is going to get pointed opportunities, and he better take advantage of them.
Interesting. Yeah, I think there was a kind of a learning curve in finding the rotations. That was one of the probably the biggest criticisms was, why is 24 still playing? Why is 2 out there still getting carries, right? Well, why is this discussion even being had when Tawi is having, and maybe it's a part of why we heard some things last year, right? Just some stuff that we won't talk about it necessarily, but that everybody knows. If you go to the boards, hey, go to OU Insider, go check it out. I'm sure you can look up some historic posts and then see what was said, what happened. I'm sure it's been discussed. Go look. There were some things that may or may not have allegedly occurred. But Todd, either way, he's at Wisconsin, and I think, in my opinion,
Perfect fit.
Perfect fit. And if he were on the OU roster right now, to me, he'd be the most NFL ready running back on the roster. He's a guy who at Wisconsin is probably going to play himself into, running backs aren't highly regarded anymore, but he's going to play himself into being a guy who's probably going to get 3, 4, 5 years worth of reps with a couple teams, right? He's a guy who, Kansas City goes and picks up, and then he goes to Miami, right? He feels like that kind of guy. And just consistent, knows how to play the position, can block, can catch, just does a lot of the little things really, really well. And then seems to have a pretty good attitude for the most part, at least as things are going on in Wisconsin.
He was bitching him on a little bit. I ain't gonna lie. He was bitching him on it. That's why he signed himself out of town.
Because he was playing. He was playing well. I mean, would you not have been bitching and moaning?
I mean, if we fighting for our lives, some of the things that, I mean, there's a time and a place and a way to do it. Period. There's an etiquette.
Okay.
And in our locker room, let me tell you something.
Talk about this. Talk about when can you bitch and moan.
We had a couple bitches and moaning. Bitches who moaned.
We had a couple bitches moaning. This is not the Barry and Mack show after dark.
Yo, I wasn't even relax. You're hilarious. Let me just tell you, and listen, I'm just gonna be honest. We didn't put up with that shit. And Coach Dupes didn't have to. Like, we would check you so fast. Like, bro, you are wilding right now. Like, you know what I'm saying? Let me see. We beat Oklahoma State, I think, of like 12-7 or something. Like 10. Like, it was a, and Derek Strait had to go and knock a ball out. They tried to do the same play they did to us in Norman the year before with the tight end, and Derek makes the play, right? And certain people, I'm not gonna say their names, but they mad they didn't get a lot of reps. If you don't sit your, excuse my candor, I'm just gonna, like, if you don't sit your monkey ass down and shut up, like, bro, we playing for our lives right now. Hey, coach, we got this one. Like, we got this. Like, coach, you don't even not speak on it. We playing for a ship. You know what I'm saying? And you worried about your stats. You're not even that good. Tuesday practice, I was housing you. So what are we talking about? And so, when players have the gall to publicly, go after their coach, that's bad for culture. That's bad for precedent. By the way, whether you do it verbally in practice or a game, or if you do some, again, I know I'm kind of cussing, but that's some bitching assness shit. If you do some, you go do an article and you go talk, like, man, what?
Yeah.
Like, we literally, you would have had to see us in the locker room. Like, man, wait, what is this? Like, what are we doing? Like, nah, bro, this, I got to call Jenny Carlson and let her know this is cap. Like, this is not it. We not, you know what I'm saying? Like, nah, I'm going to do an article and tell a story about you as cap.
Jenny. Shout out Jenny Carlson.
I know. Hey,
what's up, Jenny?
He used to write some stories about, that was my, like, I got a lot of love for Jenny. Jenny used to take care of me. She used to take care of me. But nah, like, some of the stuff he did was over the top. He was not head and shoulders the best alpha. Give it to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, he came in and provided a ton of value, especially as a I don't know if he was an NIL or just a walk on at that point in time. But you can't start making demands about when you getting Scully's and this and that. And I did this and they like, oh, my man, relax. Your time would have come. And I think the situation worked out where he's in a situation that's best for him. And Murray and the OC and the rest of the guys are in positions where they've got chemistry and a nucleus of guys who are here who want to be here. So yes, could Murray have were there some substitution issues or roster management questions? I think that's a fair thing for fans and any analysts and anybody like that to question. But there's still protocol, etiquette, chain of command. And when you're running an organization, because football is a company, when you're running a company and somebody steps out of line of that multiple times, nah, we coming for you. And so,
Yeah, and I think it's probably different with a guy like Murray, who, he's had a better career than anybody in that room is ever going to have ever, right? I mean, maybe somebody becomes the best back in the NFL for a given season,
right,
maybe, but maybe a
right,
Sawchuk does that. But when you're kind of, there's nobody who's going to be able to little bro you or say, look at me and then look what I can do. You'll never be able to, like, he's that guy. He is the man. Um, and the spray tan's got it all, man. But he's a guy who I think overall, since he's arrived at Oklahoma, has improved both on the recruiting, the technical side. I think the backs from his year one to now have blocked better, have performed better in that regard. And it just feels like the guys, especially Sawchuk a year ago, it felt like he made improvements at the position as a player. Just watching him move through the hole, watching him navigate trash, watching him pick up blocking assignments. It felt like all those things were there. He felt a little bit more like a complete Stoops style running back by the end of the year. But when Stoops was the coach, it felt like every year you had two or three guys who could block, go get you a 20-yard run and catch the ball out of the backfield. It felt that every year it was just, whether it was a Dominic Whaley, a Damian Williams, I mean, just pick random guy every year. So they had somebody who could do that. And then every other year you'd have a guy who was really explosive, who was able to go get the job done and play in the NFL. But Matt, any closing thoughts on that position? Anything before we get on out of here today and do our part two, which I think a lot of people are going to really enjoy that position group discussion, because we talk about running back being maybe kind of lower in terms of ability and then echelon. The next group we're going to chat about, and it'll be out within a day or so of this episode, probably going to be the cream of the crop, at least top three, I would say, on the team. But DMAC, as always, any closing thoughts before we get on out of here, man?
I think there's a great opportunity. You spoke to something that I think is poignant that we need to make sure we address, which is the offensive line and the running backs working in tandem. Those guys being able to have chemistry and really a feel for how to set up their blocking on the man side versus the zone side, and then really just how to hit the creases, find the creases, and things of that nature. Um, it's I worry about O-line more so than I worry about running backs. I told you they were gonna say this O-line is. Remember, I said, watch
Yeah.
every summer they go into camp and they talk about how maybe there's like one summer or two summers where they question it, and that's when they're really, 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 really good. Right. 03, 04, they were questioning the O-line. I was like, how? Like, 07, 08, they're questioning the whole line. I was like, that's Trent Smith. I mean, that's Trent Williams. And like, what
Yeah,
that O-line's pretty damn good.
pretty
And so
good.
when they're big up in the group, I think it's psychologically trying to get those guys in a headspace that's ready to go. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it is psychological.
Sure.
Running back is another one. We just listen. The SEC is a conference where when you have the opportunity to go 60, you can't trip over your own foot. You can't. You gotta go hit that. And guess
Yeah.
what? SEC running backs do it. Ole Miss running backs do it. Tennessee running backs do it. Kentucky running backs do it. And then of course the big boys, right? They're gonna do it too. So I think for us, it's just really maximizing our ability. to do that, because the last couple of years we've missed. I mean, you and I would break down film and talk about it on the pod like it was there, it was right there, and we just missed it. And so that's my concern. The other thing I would just say is this, and you and I were talking about this offline, ladies and gentlemen, we never did video prior to really, I guess, like the last 4 or 5 months. We were audio basically our first year and a half. But the Barry and Mack show is a separate channel on YouTube, and I personally want to rebuild that brand. So guys, if you're subscribed and listening to us over here, make sure we're going to start posting these over there as well. Watch the show over there. Give us your thoughts, all that good stuff. Just because yeah, man, this is what we love to do. So
yeah,
running backs were dope. I'm ready to talk some backers. I'm gonna pat myself on the back when we talk backers, because I've been
yes, sir.
speaking to a couple of names, and they've been showing themselves to be right, and a couple of them been showing themselves to be wrong. And it is what it is.
Yep. One of those people, I was listening to the radio, was it 2 days ago, D-Mac, and there was we'll call him a very well-known radio host in the sports market, right? May or may not be in Norman every Saturday down on Campus Corner doing a show. And I'll just say that it sounds like he's listened to the Barry and Mack show a couple times with some of the stuff he was saying, talking about guys who might not play and guys who are going to play. And ladies and gentlemen, we will be talking about that on the other side. As always, go to ouinsider.com. Check out what they're doing over there. Fantastic stuff. Team news, recruiting news, and the like. All of the nuggets about fall practice. By far, just the amount of people they've got covering and doing the content, it is by far the best fall camp coverage that you're gonna get, right? And some things you're hearing from the coaching staff, so some of it's gonna always sound like a little sunshine pumping, right? And I it drives me nuts maybe when people criticize that, but what are your coaches going to do, right? Your coaches are going to try and talk up these guys. They're not going to try and say, man, we suck at every spot. Like, it's just, they're not going to do it, right? So take it all with a grain of salt. Remember what you saw on the field a year ago. Know that a lot of times players' trajectory, sometimes it's linear. It's not always, right? Sometimes players have a rise, have a come to Jesus, have a light bulb moment, and just know that there's going to be a player or two who we do not expect, who's going to have a breakout season, and we'll just see what that looks like this year. But as always, thank you for listening. Make sure you go subscribe to the Instagram, to the Twitter, at BWise Fitness. Damian is at Dame That Dude, and follow him on X at D_Mac13, and me at BWise Fitness, letter B, WISE Fitness. Thank you all for listening, Sooner Nation, and we will see you soon.